everyone, in this video I will explain about foreign direct investment and intra-firm trade. Here we go.
Foreign direct investment and intra-firm trade. Value chain and global production network. A value chain is a series of value-added processes involved in the production of any good or service. It proceeds in steps from the beginning task to subsequent task. The value chain of semiconductor is actually very complex, but we simplify it by considering the following tasks. First, research, development, and design, which is leading up to details of the physical circuitry of the chip to be placed on the silicon. Second, fabrication, in an advanced manufacturing process in which circuitry layouts are etched onto silicon wafers containing many dies. This step also requires sophisticated equipment and materials. Third, assembly and testing, in which the die is cut from wafers and mounted or packaged into a functioning device with wire contacts and insulation. And the last one, the final incorporation, in which the semiconductor is incorporated into the final piece of equipment, such as a personal computer or a mobile phone. These stages are depicted in this figure. An additional task in this figure is that of advanced equipment and materials which are crucial to the fabrication process. Also, it is not necessary for a firm to be active across all of the stages of semiconductor manufacturing. It depends on the result of a firm's decision regarding to what task to perform along the value chain. We will take Intel as our case for semiconductor firm. Intel is involved in the first three stages of the value chain, which are research, development and design, fabrication, and assembly and testing. Intel is not involved in the final incorporation. They are leaving that task to the other firms. For example, one of its biggest customers is Dell Computers, which incorporates Intel semiconductors into its personal computers. Next, global production network. Value chains are potentially distributed across countries, and when these international value chains are linked together in potential buyer-supplier or ownership relationships, they become known as global production networks or GPNs. The semiconductor production decision is twofold, namely the decision regarding what part of the value chain to take on and in which countries to do so. Thus, there are both task and location decisions to consider. There is another way to look at the GPN decision-making process, which is the horizontal and vertical dimensions of GPNs. Movements up and down the value chains are vertical movements. Movements up a value chain from subsequent to previous task are backward vertical movements, and movements down a value chain from previous to subsequent task are forward vertical movement. Movements from one country to another are horizontal movements. This is the figure for global production network for semiconductors of Intel. In this figure, we only have two countries, the United States and Costa Rica. However, in reality, of course, the GPN for semiconductors spans many countries around the world. But, to keep it simple, we only use these two countries. Next, firm-specific assets and internalization. The term firm-specific assets refer to tangible and intangible resources that the firm owns and that contribute to its competitiveness over time. It might be a patent on particular technology or it might be a corporate product brand. It could even be some aspect of corporate culture that allows a firm to be more productive. We use Intel as our example, and Intel maintains its fabrication plants in the United States, its home base. It also has assembly and testing plants in a few other countries, including Costa Rica. The dashed lines in this figure indicate potential areas where Intel has chosen not to operate, which is research, development, design, and fabrication in Costa Rica and final incorporation everywhere. To begin, suppose that Intel has a demonstrate competitive ability in research, development, and design in the United States. The ability of Intel to operate where it does in its GPN reflects its competitiveness, or namely, firm-specific assets. Intel might begin to consider a move down the value chain in the United States to fabrication. This kind of forward vertical integration, Intel might experience an efficiency gain by spreading the cost incurred in acquiring its firm-specific assets. These efficiency gains are known as firm-level economies. The concept of firm-level economies is very helpful. However, it is not in general sufficient to explain the preceding integration process, because firms such as Intel always had the option of licensing its firm-specific assets to the other fabrication producers. That is, Intel could draw up a contract to rent its firm-specific assets to a fabrication firm for a specific period of time, in return for which it would receive payment. Corporate strategists suggest that a firm's decision to internalize the firm-specific asset market reflects market failure. That is, for a number of reasons, it has difficulty in selling its firm-specific assets in a contractual arrangement. This difficulty is particularly acute for intangible assets. A cost view of internalization. Suppose that a home country firm faces a fixed cost of setting up a production facility in country of FBJ. Suppose also that the firm faces a smaller fixed cost of establishing a contractual relationship with a firm from country of FCJ. There are also variable costs associated with these two options of VPJ and VCJ. The variable costs of international contracting are larger than the variable cost of international production due to the firm-specific assets that give it an advantage over the potential contracting partner. In other words, the firm itself knows how to make its product more easily than the other firms. The solid line of FPJ and VPJ graph begins at the vertical axis intercept equal to the fixed cost of production and increases from there with a slope equal to the variable cost of production. The solid line of FCJ and VCJ graph begins at a lower vertical axis intercept equal to the lower fixed cost of contracting and increases from there with a slope equal to the variable cost of contracting. The two solid lines intersect at a break-even point that establish a boundary between quantities where it would be better for the firm to engage in contracting and quantities where it would be better for the firm to engage in production. This analysis allows us to see that the contracting or production decision might be related to the volume of output the firm has in mind. The dissemination risk involved in contracting can be included in this diagram in a simplified way. It increases the fixed cost of contracting and moves the solid contracting graph upward to the dashed line. This moves the break-even point to the left and reduces the range of quantities where contracting is to be preferred. The dissemination risk itself refers to the possibility of a foreign firm obtaining knowledge capital of the home country firm and exploiting it for its own commercial advantage. This risk is especially prevalent in the licensing mode of entry. Next, intra-firm trade and the OLI framework. Intra-firm trade corresponds to international flows of goods and services between parent companies and their affiliates. Before we move back to the previous slide. From this figure, Intel exports fabricated die from its home base to its subsidiary in Costa Rica. This is not an arm's length or market-based transaction that takes place at world price. Rather, it is a trade transaction within Intel itself at a price set by it. We can tie together some of the consideration of this chapter into what has become known as the OLI framework. If the home country multinational enterprise is indeed able to successfully engage in business in the foreign country, there must be some other advantages that offset the additional cost of conducting business internationally. The role of the O advantage or ownership advantage is to explain how a firm's tangible and intangible assets help it to overcome the extra cost of doing business internationally. Also, explain why the multinational enterprise engaged in the production of a good for the foreign market instead of a foreign firm. Location or L advantages are associated with the foreign country. The L advantages could include input cost, transportation cost, import restraint, foreign government promotional policies, or access to foreign consumers. The role of the L advantage is to explain why the home country multinational enterprise chooses to produce in the foreign country rather than the home country. And the last one, internalization or I advantages. Explain why the home country multinational enterprise chooses foreign direct investment over the contracting option. The I advantages are therefore related to all the reasons why contracting might not be a viable option. Approximately one-third of world trade is intra-firm trade, taking place within multinational enterprises. This trade occurs within global production networks. Firms offset the extra cost of doing business internationally through their tangible or intangible assets, which provide ownership advantages to them and generate firm-level economies. Firms choose to operate abroad because various foreign countries offer location advantages to them, and they choose investment modes of foreign market entry over contractual modes because there are advantages to internalization. Some of these issues can be examined using cost analysis, but the full set of these issues can be summarized in the OLI framework. Thank you.